Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast and media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Stryker, LuckyEevee, Jordan, and our new co-host, Yumi. Today is our 41st episode, and we're discussing 1995's Bamboo Bears episode, Bamboo Bears. So, let's get things started. Now, when we start these episodes, I usually like to give a brief overview about the topic that we discuss. I cannot do that this week because this is by far and without a doubt the most obscure thing we have ever talked about on this podcast to date. There is almost zero information for it online. The Wikipedia page for this cartoon is literally only 3 sentences long, and information on any other website is extremely, extremely scarce. What I basically could glean from as many websites as I could is that this was a German-French co-production, and it was animated by the studio SEK. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because SEK did the Italian Titanic movies, the one with the giant octopus, not the one with the rapping dog. In fact, I have to make that distinction. Says a lot about us.
Indeed.
But the more interesting thing about SEK is that they were based out of Pyongyang, which basically means that this cartoon was animated, at least partially, in North Korea, which is very, very interesting.
The very same North Korea.
Yes, that one. And this is probably going to be the only North Korean thing we cover on the podcast, because we are never doing an episode on Pulgasari. Thank you very much.
Oh, dear.
But yeah, the thing that's interesting is I kind of want to make a list of all the countries that we're eventually going to cover on this podcast. It'd be fun to see how many obscure nations we can get on this thing. Could we find Dragoness related content in Sierra Leone or Angola?
Or Australia?
You never know. Well, Australia might be a little easier, but yeah, that'd be interesting. But anyway,
or Antarctica. You want to know what's actually going to be harder?
What?
Antarctica.
Oh yeah, that's okay. That's one that we probably would have to scratch off the list. Well, you never know. Some bored research scientist might decide to make something Dragoness related, and then we'll talk about it.
Oh no!
So if you are a member of a research station and you are currently in Antarctica, feel free to make a Dragoness or female dinosaur based media piece, and we'll review it.
Honestly, I hope this podcast reaches Antarctica, because that would be kind of funny if someone's in Antarctica listening in and is like, "Oh, hey, I could probably do that," and just make something out of the blue from Antarctica.
Well, maybe one day.
Maybe one day, yeah.
But yeah. Getting back to Bamboo Bears, the episode that we're talking about is the first episode, and the opening credits of cartoons that have relatively cheaper budgets are typically the best animated part, but not in this case, because already right off the bat, there's a lot of animation errors, because right from the get-go, you see the butterflies are very crudely layered on top of the other animals. Now, the theme song itself is pretty good. It has a decent enough tune. I couldn't remember any of the lyrics, of course, but, it still is. It's pleasant enough. The same layering error basically occurs with Ai and the Bamboo Bears flying. They're layered on top of the background, so you really show they stand out from it. They don't feel like they're actually in the location. It feels kind of like what happened a little bit last time, where the cells are basically placed in an incorrect area. It doesn't feel the same. But yeah, also the interesting thing to note is that the version of the show I watched, it actually glitches out at the end of the theme song, and it has a VHS encoding errors. Now, I need to mention, this was from the official Bamboo Bears YouTube channel. So, the official company of whoever made this show and that basically cared so little about it that they actually kept the encoding errors. So, yeah, that is not a good sign for how well remembered this cartoon is.
Indeed.
So yeah, the show proper begins in the jungle as we follow 2 red pandas. The older of the 2 is pretty much almost identical to the grandfather mouse from that Italian Titanic movie they did. And the thing that is here, and again, it might not be their fault. The voice acting is extremely stilted, and it has very, very weird pauses. like in the middle of sentences, they just stop talking, and then they wait like 2 seconds, and then they finish their sentence. It's something that sounds extremely awkward. And again, it might be like a bad dub in that. I don't know how the original version was, like the original like French and German. It probably flowed a little bit better.
Maybe Korean, who knows?
Or maybe Korean, true. But yeah, also because of this, the lip sync is really off at times. This is probably the worst part of the episode, is this opening thing, because the lip sync is very noticeably off. And the voice actors are trying to get the lips to match what they're saying, but it really is not working. You can tell that this show did not have that kind of budget to actually try and, get proper scripts where they could actually fit the voice acting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the older red panda, he tells the younger, whose name is Bamboo Lee, that the reason that all the bamboo tastes weird is because it's flowering and seeding simultaneously. And then we get probably the weirdest line of dialogue, because the older panda says that they have to move away, but then the older of the two says, "Oh, I'm too old, I can't move away." Which, I mean, that makes no sense. It's like, "Oh, we gotta leave," but, "Oh, I'm too old, I can't leave." It's like, okay.
Kind of, for the most part.
I get what they're saying, but it definitely, it might have been
definitely comes off weird.
Like a translation. Yeah.
Also, the grandpa's name is Grandpa Lee. So
thanks.
Grandpa Lee.
Oh god. I'm gonna say this right now. I did not remember any of the characters' names enough to put them in my notes.
Unfortunately.
All right, all good. But yeah, basically the older red panda gives Bamboo Lee his safari hat, and then we get to see Bamboo Lee going out into the world, and then he instantly falls into a pit trap. Sadly, that pit trap was not dug by Team Rocket to try and catch Ash and Pikachu. That would be a way better show if it was.
Yeah, wrong country.
Way better show if it was, though. But yeah, basically. But yeah, basically, we get an unintentionally funny part in this where we hear his pretty bizarre screams are hilarious, and the show is, I'm going to say it, it's not a good show by any stretch of the imaginations. It has some elements that definitely could be salvaged, and yeah, it has some good moments, but as a whole, this is not a good show. It is a good show, like if you have a bunch of friends over and you want to laugh at something that's like a really weird cartoon. It's pretty good for that, I think. But anyway, Bamboo Lee is then rescued by a female mouse, and she said that vultures dug the pit. Yeah, okay. So what's her name?
Darlene or Darlie, whichever, Darlene, honestly.
Okay. I'll call it Darlene. Okay.
They're all Asian jokes with these names for some reason.
Yeah, that's a weird thing too, that they go in that direction. But yeah, Bamboo Lee is rescued by Darlie, and she says that vultures dug the pit. I'd like to think they were the vultures in the Jungle Book, but we are.
Oh yeah, the Beatles.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? I don't know. What do you want to do? But yeah, getting back to this. Basically, the two of them argue, but it's so weird because they're animated with gigantic smiles on their face while they're having like a very intense like argument, which it feels so off. It's like they probably weren't meant to have an argument in this part, but for some reason, whoever dubbed this cartoon thought it would probably fit the story better without realizing that it doesn't match the animation at all. Because, they're basically yelling at each other, but they have huge grins on their faces, which makes them kind of look psychotic, not gonna lie. But yeah, the mouse is Darlene. I'm sorry, she's basically reduced to eating grubs as she's running out of food, and then we get to see a giant panda also arrive who complains about the lack of food. What's his name?
Slowly.
Oh God! Wow. Yeah. No wonder I didn't write down these names. They are
Asian puns.
They're not too bad, but.
They're bad.
They honestly feel mismatched a little bit. I mean, Bamboo Lee kind of works for, Bamboo Lee, and Darlene, not Darlene or Dolly, it's Darlene. I honestly thought her name was like Dolly, as in like the Dalai Lama, which
like Dolly
would have been a little funny, but no, it's Darlene. Yeah. But slowly, he's not really slow, he's just hungry, which, okay.
He's a panda. He's fat, I guess.
That's it. And that's the one joke they do. He's fat because he likes to eat.
They're also bottomless, which Okay.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And then okay, and basically slowly. Oh God, these names. Slowly, then befriends Bamboo Lee, and then we get to see a group of 3 rats who look exactly like mice. So I don't know why they did that.
No idea.
And they're apparently poachers. The smallest of the 3 rats basically runs around and is extremely annoying, which makes it very cathartic when the other 2 trip him and tell him to shut up. And by the way, this show was very creative with its character names. Because in the credits, these 3 characters are literally credited as Rat number 1, Rat number 2, and Rat number 3.
Yeah.
They literally call each other by their number as well.
Yeah, that too, and it really shows how creative the writers were with this show. But basically, Dar Lee basically goes to warn Bamboo Lee and slowly before the rat poachers get them. And they actually leave in one of the voice actors has a really flubbed line delivery because one of the rats basically stumbles over his sentence and makes it incomprehensible, and they just left it in. The way this show feels is that it was done, let's do it as cheap as possible, hence why they got North Korea to do the animation, and let's do the dubbing as quick as possible and pump it out so we can get syndication rights.
Honestly,
I don't know how successful they were in that, but we will see.
This honestly feels like that one scene from like this freaking Nutcracker point and click game that Game Grumps did at one point, and like there's this one moment where like this one character called the Baron, who's literally just a Jack in the Box goblin little thing, like kidnaps Nina, who's been turned into a doll, and like you're with 2 freaking Nutcrackers, like one of them's a Nutcracker and the other guy is like a sergeant or something like that, who's like Nina's wife, and like Nutcracker's like, oh hey look, the Baron took Nina, and the Colonel guy's like, I didn't suffer the spoils of war only to lose Nina. Like a lack of emotion. Like that part of itself wasn't exactly funny, but like the Game Grumps' reaction to that was just like shows how much effort was put into that.
It definitely makes sense. But yeah, basically,
right, we got it.
Darlie and Bamboo Lee get away, and the poachers are after slowly. And the biggest animation of this entire show occurs when the edge of the frame is actually visible. When like slowly is standing there, you actually see a strip of white, like where it should not be. This is like wacky. I don't know if you guys remember that Rocco's Modern Life episode, Wacky Deli. This is basically Wacky Deli, but without the surrealism of it in terms of animation. Because it reminds me of that one part in Wacky Deli where the camera pans down the pencil and the eraser. It feels exactly like that.
Yeah. Honestly, I've only seen like 2 episodes of that show, Leapfrogs and Bedfellows.
But yeah, Wacky Deli.
Oh, that one.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, Wacky Deli's an absolute classic, and it definitely reminded me of this show in more ways than one. So anyway, the rats then attempt to catch Darlie and Bamboo Lee, but then they all stare in shock at something in the sky, and it turns out to be I, the Dragoness, who is easily the best part of this show, and probably the only really tolerable thing. Her design is really unique. She wears a pilot cap with a red scarf and has blonde hair, which is definitely, like I said, unique because most Dragonesses do not have hair at all. So to see one like this, it makes her stand out a lot more. She has pink scales. Sorry, go ahead.
There are a few exceptions to that rule. Also, it honestly makes me think that at some point, instead of like Amelia Earhart, quote unquote, going missing or crashing, it ultimately like I honestly imagine like Amelia Earhart ended up becoming a Dragoness at some point.
That would be an awesome story idea. That would
be a very interesting theory.
Definitely.
Like Amelia Earhart. Oh my gosh! I just realized something.
What?
I like her. Like both I and Amelia sound like have the same first syllable of their names. So like imagine like Amelia Earhart got freaking amnesia somehow became a dragoness by another character we'll get to in a bit, and it's basically just Amelia Earhart but with amnesia, but she's okay with that.
I think we're putting way more thought into this than the writers of this show ever did.
Honestly, it might have been the joke.
Yeah.
Like I said, her pink scales and her purple wings are also really unique. Her bottom heavy shape, of course, is very appreciated because that is my favorite body type for a dragoness.
Indeed.
And she also definitely has the best voice actress of this show because her British actress is very nice to the ears. I did not see who voiced her because I looked in the credits and I could not see. I tried looking up online, but again, no information on who actually voiced who.
Indeed.
So pretty hard. I then lands, which startles the rats away, and the size difference between I and the others, it only makes her more visually appealing that she's just so huge, shall we say.
Yeah, she's so perky. She's so huge. Yeah,
that's her. But like I say, then we get to see I and laugh, and then they reuse the same animation a couple of seconds later, and then you're like brought back to the realization that, oh yeah, this is a really, really cheap show. And again, I'm not blaming the animators for this because again, this is from North Korea. What kind of resources do you think they have there to do, animation? Probably not much, but it turns out. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, what happens is the others want to fight her, but I decides to bring them all to her master. There's another nice musical number when I flies through the sky, and we get to see, it's actually pretty nice. The best animation of the show happens in this little montage when I flies around in circles. But then we get her taking them through various locations, again, with reused animation, and what happens with definitely a lot of padding. There is an intentional joke that is kind of funny, though, when the screen basically shakes, and that is something that it really, really works out. And it definitely was probably the only intentional joke of the show that actually lands for me, because I have a soft spot for fourth wall break and stuff like that.
Wait, how did it shake again?
Well, when she lands, the screen actually shakes with her, which it might have been unintentional. It might have been just like another VHS error. But for me, I think that if it was intentional, it is really, really funny.
Nice.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But then the trio then enter the cavern that she took them to find an elderly. I couldn't tell what animal he was. I think he's a bat, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, the tree.
Yeah. It also there's also a song that happens when they fly up there. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I said about that.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. No problem. But yeah, basically the trio tell the old bat about the poachers, and they're wondering if they actually saw a dragoness, even though they clearly did. It's like, well, no, dragons don't exist. Well, you just saw one. What was that took them away? But anyway, the elderly bat then tells them about the dangers that the rats pose in the environment, and it turns out that the rats run a major corporation inventively titled Ratco that causes pollution. So now we're in Captain Planet all of a sudden.
And Inspector Gadget, because their boss is basically just gangster Dr. Claw, and that we never see his face.
Dr. Claw as a rat, yeah. And the bat checks on his high-tech computer that looks like it came from like 1967 or something, like one of those like old style computers, to find out about the evil leader, Mr. Rattoni. And I cannot confirm or deny, it would be an amazing twist if it turns out Mr. Rattoni is the evil gangster rat from the Italian Titanic movie. That would be insane if they actually decided to just reuse the same character in it.
Oh yeah, that honestly would be pretty wild.
Sadly, thankfully, we did not get to see Pingo or the talking screwdriver, which if you've seen the second Italian Titanic movie that SEK did, you will know why that is a good thing. But anyway, basically, he calls the poachers to berate them about not going with their plans, and they try to tell him about I in a conversation that I could not just make out. The audio mixing on this conversation is just really, really terrible.
Long and short of it, as I can understand it, is that he gives them a backpack that's basically a computer phone sort of thing, like a televised phone, as it were. And basically, that's basically the backpack I has. And they're also given a magic stick, which they can toss in the air and have I come to their aid, because apparently Amelia Earhart is a portable dragon now. So.
Yeah, Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna bring that up because what happens is that the trio then decide to help out the old bat fight Ratko instantly.
Nice.
No hesitation. They're like, it reminds me of like in SpongeBob. Who wants to save the world? I do. I do. I do. I don't. Oh yes, you do. No world means no money. Save the world or you're fired.
Yeah.
It's like that level of just like, okay, we'll do it. Why not? But it's honestly hilarious. But then, we see She goes to help out the older red panda to find him a better home. He's trying to fish in a stream, but he's not doing a very good job of it. Actually gets some pretty good sarcasm in when the panda freaks out about her. And there's something just about the way that she so matter-of-factly says that I'm a pink dragon and I'm not here to eat you. It's just like, she says it like it's the most normal thing in the world that, again, it feels like an intentional joke, and it's one that lands. Hence another reason why is the best character. And to be honest with you, she probably could have been the main character, and it would have been a lot more interesting.
Probably,
like mystical creatures trying to catalog like actual endangered creatures of our world. I don't know. There's something you could do with that would have made a lot more sense than the show we got. But again,
it's very interesting. Like, oh shit, I had a thought on that, but I lost it. But another thing I was reminded of is that in the same scene, like, he legit says a few lines that make it sound like he was legit about to take a dump or something. Which,
oh god,
oh my gosh,
yeah.
But anyway, it didn't happen. But they really skirted the line with that on the dub. Thank you very much.
Thank God they end. This would be the kind of show that would do that. But I basically tells him that the area near her cavern is much better, and about the bamboo lead and the other bamboo bears mission. Even though Dar Lee is not a bear technically, but semantics. She then uses her tail to spear some fish for the red panda, but then he decides he doesn't need it. And then we get an incredibly weird little part here, in that the fish somehow talks in an extremely deep voice as she sets off to the cavern. But it's like the fish clearly wasn't animated to talk. So whoever dubbed this decided that, you know what, this random fish he's holding in his hands and flopping, we should make it talk for some reason. So more genius ideas from the factory here.
Indeed.
But the bat then shows the trio how basically everything works with their mission, which sets up the rest of the series. And most of the rest of the episodes that I saw on their YouTube page, and I basically glanced over because they do not get any better animation quality wise or story wise. Most every other episode of Bamboo Bears is the team basically encountering some kind of endangered animal, and they rescue them from some kind of harm from the three rat poachers and Ratco in general. So it basically is the same concept dragged out for 25 episodes, but thankfully this one was not that. The bat then gives them a magical cane that basically summons I at any moment that they want. And now what happens is that he also gives her a saddle so that she can have them ride on her as they take off to further adventures. And her having a saddle just reminds me of Yoshi.
She's basically Pink
Yoshi.
Dragon Yoshi.
Yeah, basically.
She also reminds me a bit of Dragon Tales. Not gonna lie.
I can definitely see that. Although Dragon Tales is a much, much better show than this. Even like animation, characterization, and everything, even that is a much, much better show than this. But basically they all hop on I's saddle on her back, and they ride off into many further adventures, which consisted mostly of 25 episodes before it fell into complete obscurity. before this podcast, and I did research on finding out female dragonesses in various forms of media. I have never heard of this show, seen anything of this show ever. This is like one of those things that it feels like it shouldn't exist. Like this should exist in some alternate, backwards, nightmarish dimension where this is the highest rating cartoon of all time, and SpongeBob only lasted for like 5 episodes. This feels like the movie The Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Became Mixed Up Zombies, which is a very weird comparison, I know, but it has that same element of wrongness to it. It feels like this shouldn't exist. Like, how did this get made? Who agreed to this? Who signed off on this? It's so many unanswered questions. And the fact that it's so obscure and it just only makes it even more mysterious, which adds to like its wrongness factor. It's like if we had at least like interviews with people who did this, like information on the companies that greenlit this and the actors, but no, this really feels like it came from some kind of an alternate dimension of sorts. But yeah, this definitely is the most obscure thing we will cover on the podcast, probably for a long, long time. And as I said earlier, overall, my opinion on Bamboo Bears is it's just very awkward. It's not a good show by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, listen to this way. If the official company that released it on YouTube couldn't be bothered to get like the best version of the show that they could, I mean, that tells you a lot right there. It is, I can't say it's a negative loss to watch it, though. It's something that you watch like almost like a train wreck or something, like just to see how bizarre it could get and how just wrong it could be in a way. And again, there are some good moments. I herself is a fantastic character, and she deserved a way better show. Way better. Like, she deserved to actually be the star of this show, to be honest. I mean, like I said earlier with my idea with the Bamboo Bears and, with her being a mythical creature that has to basically catalog, other kind of creatures and that. But I feel like this, it just is, it exists. Let's do it this way. This is a thing that it exists, it's inexplicable, and it's not even very memorable, but once you watch it, it's something that will never really leave your head, and that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I'll personally admit, like, I've seen way worse, and this honestly has a bunch of like harmless stuff to it that I can't really say is all that offensive to me personally, but I will admit that at certain times it can feel a little odd. It's not too bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I will admit that it's a little basic.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely, like I said, it feels like a show that they didn't really put much thought, much care, much effort into. It's like, okay, we did our 26 episodes. Let's go out to eat, and that was like, that's it. We wash our hands of this.
It's good. We got it.
Yeah, and again, like I say, SEK is an animation studio that, again, they animate a lot of things, and most of the things they animate, and probably the best known ones, are the Italian Titanic movies with the dog face octopus, which, again, are very bizarre experiences. This show, it's not as strange as those movies. It just has a feeling of, again, like wrongness to it in a way. But saying that, we are going to go from one obscure cartoon to another, where we get to the question of the week, which is, what is the most obscure cartoon that you remember watching? Now, I'll go first, and again, because, I grew up watching like a Cartoon Network Spain, and that there's a show that aired over here, and I don't know if it ever aired in the States or anything like that. It's called Cutlass. It aired right after Ed, and Eddy, like almost every day. What it was a series of like parodies of different types of movies reenacted by stickmen. Cutlass was always the main character, and he always had like a female companion, and every single character were faceless stick figures. And there's also one other thing about Cutlass that is very, very interesting to note. It was violent. Like in the first episode with the Western, like the sheriff gets shot, he falls down, and a pool of blood forms around him. And again, this is done with like the most simplistic art style possible. And it's done with like the voice acting too. It's almost done like a silent show in a way in some parts. But it is a show that's just so surreal. And the fact that it aired on a children's network was definitely something else. But yeah, it was called, I think the full title was Los Buenos de Cutlas. And yeah, it's spelled Cuttlas. And it can be found on YouTube, actually. And I highly recommend it just to see the animation styles and that. And yeah, it definitely was a show that, again, it aired right after Ed, Edd n Eddy. So occasionally I'd accidentally watch it. And as a kid, I'd have no idea what was going on. It felt like I shouldn't even be watching this thing. But yeah, it was an experience. And it's a show that, it's not a bad show by any stretch of the imagination. It's actually very, very good. It's very clever. It's very creative. It has a lot of inventiveness with how they do the different scenarios and that. But just the fact that they actually went through with airing something like that, and for a while it was very obscure. You know, I could find like almost no information, no videos on it or anything. Now that's changed, thankfully. But as a kid, like randomly watching Cartoon Network, you know, watching Ed, Edd n Eddy, watching Powerpuff Girls, watching Dexter, watching Courage, and then this, you know, stick figure show basically play on TV that parodied a different genre every episode. It was incredibly violent. For that to come up, it felt like you hallucinated it. Like, was this a real television show or was it something I made up? And then when I found it on YouTube, you have that sensation. I think everybody's had that sensation at least once where they watch something on TV and it's like, oh, that did exist. I didn't make it up. That was my experience with seeing Cuttlas again.
Indeed.
Yeah, and that's gonna be my pick is Los Buenos de Cutlas, or you know, Cuttlas, as it probably would be easier to find. I'll post a link to it later on in the channel, but for now, yeah, that's gonna be my pick. Angron, what would you have to say?
Okay, so this is gonna be a little tricky because there are two cartoons that ultimately come to mind that not a lot of people talk about, and if they do, it's very rare and nobody really remembers it or have never even heard of it. But these don't just barely count in my opinion because I'm sure there are people out there who have heard of it. But for now, the first one is honestly one that not a lot of people talk about since it was a show made by a very well-known animator, Gennady Tartakovsky, and I remember the show a lot. I saw it recently, and it was very interesting. And to this day, it has never gotten a continuation. Period. Symbionic Titan. I don't know if any of you remember that, but it is it's very much worth your time. It's got its odd moments, but I do admit that I very much enjoy this show a lot. Another show is, believe it or not, based off a comic made by the same people who, or made by the same comic company who made Invincible, oddly enough.
Ooh,
Super Dinosaur. They made a cartoon of this, and overall, I had my fun with it. It's a little basic, but I will admit that it's got its enjoyable moments. Like the updated designs here are much better, in my opinion, than the comic. If anyone here feels that's a hot take, then okay. But yeah, that's my thought. I'm on now. Symbiotic Titan, you can easily watch again, but Super Dinosaur is a little trickier to nail down. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Super Dinosaur because, yeah, it's a great show and honestly, it needs a little more notoriety since, like, it's pretty much suffered more or less the same fate as Symbiotic Titan. But at least it had somewhat of a quote unquote resolution compared to that.
I see. But yeah, like I said, I haven't heard of either show. I think Symbiotic Titan, I've heard of it, but it was a little after my time, and I didn't really get a chance to see it.
A little bit.
But yeah, like I said, they definitely sound really good, and it's good that when a show like that from obscurity can always be saved a little bit like that, that is always good, you know? It's a good feeling. That's why I think you have so many people like with lost media and that looking for things that, you know, that they remember but they can't find anywhere. Because I think we all have that innate desire, I guess would be the right word, to like make sure that the things we remember are what they remember. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Man, there are just so many things that like are like you can like you remember them, but for the life of you, you cannot remember them. Like there's probably stuff like there's stuff that you can still find like Cyber Chase, Symbiotic Titan again, and this other weird show that I used to watch that basically felt like that was basically a mix of live action and computer animation, more or less. That felt like Halo, sort of. But yeah, there are a bunch of others out there that you have never heard of, and it's a real shame. I know a lot of people have probably never heard of the '90s Felix the Cat cartoon, trippy as it was. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. Like I say, both those shows sound really interesting. I'm definitely going to check out that second one you mentioned, the Dinosaur Land thing.
Yeah, Super Dinosaur.
Super Dinosaur, sorry. But yeah, that sounds really interesting. Yep.
All right.
Okay. And Stryker, what would you have to say is the most obscure or like rarest cartoon that you remember seeing, either as a kid or as an adult?
Well, when you mentioned like when you found out about Cutlass, like, oh hey, I didn't make this up, you know, I this actually did exist. I think that would have to be this one show, Monster Buster Club, for me. I barely remember anything about it, but it's from the same creators of Code Lyoko.
Oh,
what? Oh, Code Lyoko! That's another show.
I remember that show. That show I do remember airing. I never really got into it, but I do remember that the animation definitely was neat.
Yeah,
so,
animation was neat for.
Just one day I was thinking like there was this one show I remember. I can't, I couldn't remember its name, and then I looked it up, and it's like this wasn't a fever dream. I remember a lot of the episodes very vividly, of course, but like
I remember Code Lyoko, man. Oh, yeah. I need to go back and there are a lot of things I need to just go back and just watch all the way through again. Ben 10,
absolutely, same here.
Oh, dang, Liberty's Kids, that's another obscure one.
That's another good one, actually. Liberty's Kids.
Yeah, that was a show I watched. Didn't hate it, all things considered.
That was a show that I watched when I was a kid, too, and that was, like, religiously. But no, my choice would be Monster Buster Club, because, like, it just, for some reason, Lud had to remind me about remind me of that, like, eureka moments that I had.
No, like I say, I'm glad I could jog your memory like that. And like I say, I think I remember something about Liberty Kids. I remember reading they had like an insane amount of guest stars on that show.
That's what the show was called. Zix.
Liberty's Kids. Oh, yeah. Zix.
Yeah, I honestly might need to change my answer to Zix, because I remember seeing this. I know nothing about the people who made it, but I know that like the 3D animation reminded me a bit of Halo at one point. But yeah, I remember seeing this show alongside another possibly obscure show, Dragon Hunter. But unlike that, this only got like 13 episodes. And oh wait, no, never mind. That's technically 3 seasons, but that's it.
Well, I mean, that is a lot better than some other shows. I get where you're coming from, though, you know?
Yeah, it's very
Absolutely.
obscure, and honestly, I want to go back and honestly finish that.
Hey, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. You know, especially like I say, when you find shows like that and you find that there's so much more than what you remember. Like sometimes what you do is you only remember like one specific episode. Like in my example with Cutlass, I only remember the cowboy western episode, but there was a whole like other set of them that I didn't get to see. So it's always like a treat in a way. It's like when you find out that there was more than what you remember, like so much more. I think
Oh,
that
yes.
definitely ties into it.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
Jordan, what would you have to say?
I don't have a review. I kind of fell asleep listening to this, so I have
Alright.
What we said is okay. What would you say is the most obscure cartoon that you remember watching?
Oh boy. Good lord. I guess it would probably an old one. It would probably be Dark Pirates, I guess. I wouldn't say it's obscured, but I think it's something that maybe we should try and look at. But I think it's pretty cool for me to watch.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
It's got something to do with reptiles and dragons
Oh,
that I
definitely.
have seen. It's called the Dark Waters of Dark Water. It's a pirate series.
Pirates
and
of
I
Dark
wouldn't
Water, is
say
that it?
Pirates of Dark
Yep.
Water.
Yep.
Nice. So yeah, that's a sorry about that. No, that's a really good option. And LuckyEevee, what would you have to say?
I didn't really watch any obscure shows. I watched like stuff everyone else usually would.
I see, but nothing like.
What about the those weird unofficial quote unquote Pokemon stuff from
I guess, but I don't
educational
remember.
stuff?
Oh yeah, the Learning League stuff.
So yeah, like with that. So like this was that like a educational Pokemon
Yeah,
knockoff?
remember it wasn't a knockoff. It was officially like licensed.
Oh right. Yeah, I remember that. I
Officially
remember that.
licensed, but nobody other than you and us technically recently know about it.
Yeah, I remember that. You showed that to us.
I mean, whoever makes the Wikipedia article clearly saw them.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, like I said, what that show basically entails is it's an educational show that basically teaches various topics and that using Pokemon characters and that, and it has some of the cheapest flash animation that you will ever see. And the fact that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company actually signed off on it is absolutely incredible. And you can tell that they didn't have that much of a budget because some of the voice actors are okay, some of the others are a little off from what they should sound like. And yeah, I remember you showed that to us. That is definitely an obscure show because not a lot of people know about that, and it definitely is a weird one. Let's say it that way. It's definitely like not as weird as something like say Bamboo Bears and that, but it definitely is something that you would not expect to see, especially from the Pokemon franchise.
Yeah.
Yep. And sadly, our new co-host has left for a little bit, but that's okay.
Yep.
Maybe he'll return before we finish. And
We'll find out.
now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale, and where we rank the Dragonesses. Today we're going to rank II, and this is going to be something very interesting because II is clearly the center of the show. She is clearly the best part of the show by a wide margin. I mean,
Hell yeah.
she easily is probably the only good thing about this show, to be honest. But the problem is normally that would result in an extremely high ranking. But then we have to go on the bell curve that is the rest of Bamboo Bears.
Yeah.
Because I herself would be, if this is like a well-animated, well-paced show, I would easily be looking at a 9, maybe even perfect 10 out of 10, to be honest. But the problem is that Bamboo Bears itself is not a good show. She's a great character. She is a perfect character who deserves a lot more love. She has a great design, great voice, great everything. Unfortunately, they reused animation with her as well, so that knocks down a few points, but a little quibble there. But I just feel, again, if Bamboo Bears was a competent show, maybe a competent company with like relatively, decent animation and decent voice acting and that, she would get an extremely high score. Unfortunately, because of that, I can't go any higher, and I really hate to do this, than 7 out of 10 for her. The reason I'm giving her that low of a score, again, is because relative to everything around her, she is a 10 out of 10. But when you don't look at I in just a vacuum, when you look at her with the entire rest of the series around her and rest of this episode, it really, really is a shame because, again, she's a great, great character, and it would be great if they could actually do something with her, in this show or sometime in the future. I have no idea who owns the rights to this or if there even are any right holders. There has to be because they're uploaded to YouTube, but who knows? Maybe it's public domain and anyone can do anything they want with II. I'm not saying that she is. I'm just saying that it's a possibility because, again, this show is just a fever dream, but II is something that you would remember for the right reasons in the show that was probably made for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. So, Angron?
Oh, boy. Okay. So I agree she is the better character of this show for the most part. But I will have to say that despite having like some charm and overall just being like a pretty perky character, all things considered, she's, shall we say, a bit on the basic side. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to give her a 7 out of 10 as well. I would say 6 out of 10, but she's a little better than that, I feel.
Okay, all good. Stryker, what would you have to say?
Same, 7 out of 10. She was the best thing about the show.
Anything that you want to add with like the reasoning in that?
Honestly, not really, other than just she was the best thing about the show.
Okay, so far it's unanimous. Jordan?
I've never heard of this show, but if I did, I would probably agree with 7 out of 10.
Okay, wow, we might actually get a perfect score across the board. Let's just see what LuckyEevee has to say.
I'm looking at design and I really like it, so yeah.
You're gonna go with 7 as well?
Yeah.
Wow, I believe that is the first time in the history of this podcast in all 41 episodes. Actually, no, it's actually the first time since Maleficent. Wow. So since from 40, it took us 40 more episodes to get to a Dragoness that got a universal score across the board. Maleficent got 8 out of 10s all across the board, and II got a 7 out of 10s. Of course, we're going to eventually redo Maleficent, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes.
So,
7 out of 10, it seems.
Yep. And so that is it.
I found like a figurine of her.
Oh wow, okay. A little bit of update here, people. There apparently exists or existed Bamboo Bears merchandise. Because right now we are looking at a picture of what is a pencil sharpener or pencil eraser or something of II. It's a cute statue. So this show must have done somewhat well enough to actually get merchandise of it. Wow, that is a pretty big shock right there.
There's also ones for the other characters too.
Yeah, so apparently this show was popular enough to get merchandise, but I have no idea that this existed at all. I did not find this in my notes. So, wow, Bamboo Bears, a show that is so obscure it has no Wikipedia article, basically, but it was not so obscure that it actually got merchandise of it. I think that's the perfect way to wrap up this discussion of this show with a little bit of extra bonus weirdness for you. If you have any questions, or if you want to tell us how you would make II the main character of the show, feel free to email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com or visit us on Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Next time, we'll be talking about the 1996 The New Adventures of Flash Gordon episode, The Invisible Claw. It'll be really interesting to talk about this bit of pulp sci-fi heroism here. And until next week, thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.
Later.
Bye.
See ya.
Adios.